Thank you very much for being on the programme.
Good morning, Sophie.
Good morning. Now, I appreciate it might feel slightly strange starting a pre-budget interview talking about tweets from Gary Lineker, but it has spiralled into a full-blown crisis for the BBC. Do you think he needs to apologise?
Well, I personally profoundly disagree with the comments that he made, but I think what this shows, and indeed the related debate about the BBC chairman's appointment, and we should wait until the investigation is completely independent investigation before passing judgment on that, is that impartiality at the BBC is really important. The reason that it is a great national institution that we all treasure so much is because it is respected for impartiality. So we need to make sure that what comes out of this is that people's confidence in the impartiality of the BBC is restored.
So you think that it's been compromised by the...
No, and I don't think it's for me. I'm one of the people, by the way, who the BBC scrutinise, and as do you in your show. And so it's not for me to tell the BBC how to do that. But I think what this has shown is how important the BBC is to all of us. And the central thing that people want to know is that, you know, there isn't any kind of political agenda in the way the BBC goes about its business, which I'm not saying there is. But that is the confidence people need to have. But
that's the point, isn't it? Because you talk about the confidence and impartiality, but I can't help wondering if what we've seen has led people to question the BBC's independence, which is also very important as well. You mentioned, of course, Richard Sharp, the chairman of the BBC, who failed to declare his role in facilitating an £800,000 loan to Boris Johnson. You say that you want to keep out of the Gary Lineker debate and it's for the BBC, but we're only in this position because MPs like yourself, Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick, other Conservative backbenchers have come out very strongly to criticise the Gary Lineker tweet, and now you're just trying to wash your hands of it.
Well, I think that BBC independence really does matter for the country, and that's why I think it's important that we let the BBC sort out these problems. But what I want to see as the outcome is trust being maintained in what is a very, very important institution. When it comes to an election, we are very lucky to be in a country where we have an organisation that is an independent arbiter of the truth so that people can find out the facts and then make their judgment about which party to vote for. That's something very precious, and that's what we want to make sure that we protect.
Do you think the current BBC leadership is seen as too close to the party of government?
Well, I don't think it's for me to make those judgments. I think that if we believe the BBC should be independent, which I do, if we believe in BBC impartiality, which I do, then we have to let the BBC resolve these issues.
I guess one of the reasons people feel strongly about impartiality is because Gary Lineker has paid an awful lot of taxpayers' money. Do you think that the funding model of the BBC should be looked at?
Well, I think we always need to keep up with the times, and, you know, we're in a world where funding models for all broadcasting is changing with, you know, the advent of streaming, for example. But do I believe in a taxpayer-funded broadcaster that is able to, for example, be one of the most respected news gatherers in the world? Yes, I do. I think it's very important for the country and actually very important for the world. So I think we have something very precious with the BBC. That's why we're talking about it, even though you're a competitor of the BBC's, because it's very important to all of us. And I think what we want to come out of this is people feeling confident that the BBC is on the right track when it comes to independence, impartiality, all these things that really matter.
Well, if all that matters, you previously said that Gary Lineker should apologise. Do you still think that?
Well, I don't agree with his comments.
So should he apologise then?
You know, I personally think that he was wrong to say what he said. But I don't think it's for me to decide how that issue is resolved.
But you previously said that he should apologise. Do you still think that?
As I say, I don't agree with what he said. As a government, we want to get on with solving the issue of illegal migration, partly because I'm very proud we're one of the most open and tolerant countries in the world when it comes to legal migration. But if you believe in BBC independence, then it's not for the Chancellor or any other government minister to say how these issues are resolved.
Rowing back then from the call for the apology, it feels like. Now, I don't want to waste time rattling through a list of possible measures that might be in the budget. You telling me you can't talk about them. Frustrating for me, frustrating for you, frustrating for our viewers as well. So what, in broad terms, should we expect from your budget?
Well, I am a Conservative who believes in the virtue of work. I am incredibly proud of the fact that because we've reduced taxes on the lowest paid, changed the welfare system, introduced the national living wage, someone who is on benefit and out of work will make an extra £7,500 to £10,000 if they get a job full-time on the national living wage. And that's one of the reasons why unemployment has halved since we've been in power. But we still have over 1 million vacancies in the economy. And the Brexit decision was a choice, the right choice in my judgment, to say we shouldn't fill those vacancies from unlimited migration. We need to break down the barriers that stop people here in the UK from working, whether that's parents who have obstacles because of childcare costs, whether it's older people who feel they need to retire earlier than they might perhaps want to, whether it's long-term sick who find there are barriers to working. We need to break down those barriers. And this is a budget in which I will be systematically going through all the areas where there are barriers that stop people working who want to, so that we can help people get back to work, fill those vacancies for our businesses.
The problem is, it's quite hard to get people back to work if they don't have to, isn't it? If you're taking an early retirement and you can afford to do it, why would you leave the golf course and go back to work? And also, I understand that there are real barriers for some parents going back to work. Many people, it's a choice if they want to spend more time with a young family. Surely the easiest way to fill those vacancies, if we're real, is by immigration.
Well, I think our choice is not to do that.
Why not?
Because that was the decision in the Brexit referendum.
Well, not necessarily. I think people wanted control over borders, and you could decide to relax certain immigration rules to fill certain vacancies, couldn't you?
Controlled legal migration, but not filling every vacancy in our businesses with uncontrolled migration. And that was the decision we took by leaving the single market. We fully respect the choice of people who don't wish to work. This isn't about changing that choice, but there are lots of people. Let me give you an example. There are 700,000 parents on low pay, on universal credit, who have a child under 12 and they aren't able to work because of the high cost of childcare. Now, we're looking at whether we can remove some of those barriers, for example, by paying them their childcare in advance, not in arrears, looking at the level of support that we give them. And those are families that would really benefit if the mum or the dad was able to get back into work. That's removing a barrier that's stopping people participating in the labour force. I think that's a good thing.
Some people on your own side are getting a bit twitchy about the level of taxation, shall we say. Corporation tax is due to rise from 19% to 25%. When you ran to be party leader, this is what you told me on corporation tax. You said, I'm also someone who doesn't think we shouldn't just stop the corporation tax rises. I think we should cut them so that they're the lowest in Europe and North America. I think we should cut it to 15%. Are you really going to be the Chancellor who puts it up to 25%? What happened to that, Jeremy Hunt?
Well, it's the same Jeremy Hunt that's with you now, and I still want us to have the most competitive business taxes anywhere in the world. Look, I am a Conservative who believes in a low-tax economy. I'm incredibly proud of the fact that under successive Conservative governments, we've reduced taxes so that for the first time in our history, you can earn £1,000 a month without paying a penny of tax or national insurance. That's, by the way, that is one of the reasons why we've lifted 2 million people out of absolute poverty after housing costs. That's including 500,000 children. So it's a very, very big deal that we've done that. For businesses, we need to encourage investment by companies from overseas coming into the UK, investment by companies at home. That's how we'll close our productivity gap. But I also have to be responsible with public finances. We're not going to do what the last Labour government did and run out of money. Businesses need the stability that comes from being responsible. So we will get there gradually, but get there we will.
But let's look at the tax level, shall we? Because if you look at the current tax burden, you can see here it's projected to hit highest level since the 1960s. I'm just trying to get my head around the fact that, you say you believe in low taxes, you're a Chancellor who ran for the leadership saying he was going to cut corporation tax, and now this is a situation you are presiding over with the economy. I mean, it takes a certain amount of mental gymnastics to get there.
Well, look at where that graph starts to go up. We had a global pandemic. We've had an energy crisis. I'm actually very proud of the fact that we're a society which does believe in having a safety net. And despite the fact that our GDP fell by 20% at one point during the pandemic, we still kept unemployment low. We haven't seen thousands of people thrown onto the dole because we stepped in. But that cost money, and I think it was right that we responded in the way we did when we did. And because we have to be responsible with our public finances, yes, we are having to put taxes up temporarily. But the path we're going on, look at our track record, bringing down taxes on the lowest paid. In the autumn statement...
Track record is a tax burden that's the highest since the 1960s.
Well, I've just told you, for the first time, you don't pay a penny of tax or national insurance on the first £1,000 you earn every month. Last autumn, despite all the challenges we face, we reduced business rates by an average of 10%. So a Conservative government will always cut taxes when we can, but we won't run out of money. We'll be responsible with public finances because businesses also, Sophie, need stability. And if they're going to invest, they need to know that they've got a government that is being sensible, sound money, responsible with public finances.
It sounds, very steady as she goes. You're the Chancellor, right? This is probably the job you dreamed of when you were a kid. What's the vision? What's the big idea?
Well, when I was young, I took the decision not to get a well-paid job in the city, but to set up my own business. And that was the best decision I ever took. And I became Chancellor because I want to help people like me who have big dreams for the future. And I have big dreams for the future of our country as well. But that means taking difficult decisions when you have huge challenges like a pandemic, like an energy crisis. It means being responsible with public finances. But look at what's happened to this country in the last 13 years. We have built the third biggest tech economy in the world after America and China, the biggest life science sector in Europe, where we discovered one of the 2 big COVID vaccines, one of the major COVID treatments, the largest film and TV industry in Europe. We have got so many exciting things happening in our country, and I want to make sure that we go from strength to strength.
You talk about your vision there as a child. You were a radical on tax when you ran for the leadership. When you were chair of the Health Select Committee, you wanted to transform the NHS. And now it feels a bit like, you're running the economy as if you're Jeremy from accounts.
Well, I think you have to wait and see what I say on Wednesday. But Jeremy, the Chancellor, will be responsible with public finances. I make absolutely no apology for that. I think families who want to know that their money is safe need to know that they have a responsible Chancellor and a responsible Conservative government. But what you will also see on Wednesday is that we have a plan to tackle the biggest problems we face as a country, whether it's a lack of investment, whether it's businesses not able to recruit. And we have a very exciting plan for the future of our country that will make us one of the most prosperous in the world.
Away from the budgets, how concerned are you by the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank UK?
Well, I think the first thing to say is the Governor of the Bank of England has made it very clear there is no systemic risk to our financial system. So people should be reassured on that basis. But there is a serious risk to our technology and life sciences sectors, many of whom bank with this bank that most people won't have heard of, the Silicon Valley Bank, but it happens to look after the money of some of our most promising and exciting businesses. And so I want to reassure people. I've been in discussions over the weekend until late last night with the Chancellor, with the Prime Minister, the Governor of the Bank of England, many other people, and we are working at pace on a solution. We will bring forward very soon plans to make sure people are able to meet their cash flow requirements, pay their staff. But obviously what we want to do is to find a longer-term solution that minimises or even avoids completely losses to some of our most promising companies.
Could you step in with taxpayers' money to try and safeguard jobs?
I don't want to go into what the solution is, but what I will say, because people are worried about paying their staff next week, is we will come forward with a solution that helps those very, very important companies with things like payroll and their cash flow requirements. But we also want to put in place a longer-term solution so that their futures are secure.
And how quickly should we expect to see this package?
Well, as I say, we've been working at pace. This only started to happen on Friday. We've been working at pace over the weekend through the night. And the Prime Minister and I and the Governor of the Bank of England are absolutely determined to do everything we can to protect the future of these very, very important companies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.